Hello everyone. Here we will see the summary of an introduction written by Kamala Das. Shall we see about poet? Prominent Indian poet and writer Kamala Das wrote in Malayalam, her native tongue, as well as English. She wrote under her pen name Madhavi Kutti. Theme of the poem. In an introduction, Das develops deeply into the important issues of feminism, equal liberty, freedom, and marriage. This poem strongly supports women's right to free choice and makes a very obvious feminist argument. This applies to all facets of life, although the poet emphasizes marriage in particular. She demonstrates to the audience how her existence and the regulations she is required to abide by limit her independence by drawing comparisons and contrast between these societal rules performed by men and women. The poet begins her explanation by stating that although she is unaware of politics, she is convinced of all politicians in her country, from Nehru on up to the current crop. She has memorized the names of every politician, just like she knows the hours of the week and the identities of the months, because India's politics have historically been held by favor hands. The lines illustrate how men have ruled the nation without granting women this right. Furthermore, there are favor of them because democracy only existed in theory. In actuality, only a small group of individuals who consider themselves to be the nation's permanent rulers continue to hold that position. The poet is now moving closer to her personal experience. She claims that, in contrast to the British, she was an Indian and brown. She is a Malabar native. She is fluent in 3 languages, writes in 2, and uses a universal language in one of her dreams. She expresses her Indianness in this way. She can write in 2 languages, possibly English plus her native tongue, and speaks 3 languages like the majority of Indians. She claims that she only thinks of one because everyone shares the dream world. No of their gender, everyone in our world speaks a single language. She writes in English because she is well versed in the language. However, her friends, family, and critics disapprove of this practice of hers. Since they all believe that English is a colonial language, they all criticize her for composing in it. She queries their motives for their criticism. Why she can't allowed to write in any language she chooses? She reveals in these remarks the envious character of her close friends and family members who can't stand her talent. They criticize her because of this. They try to convince her fact the dialect she writes in this the tongue of colonist and that she should refrain from using it, although there is no logical justification for such prohibitions. She does, however, inquiry as to how a language may be claimed by a specific group of people. She shouldn't be prevented from utilizing it because it belongs to everyone who uses it. Her writing is written in her language, complete with all of its squares or flaws. Although the language is not entirely English, she still believes everything to be honest since, like her, it is imperfect, which is completely acceptable. She demonstrates her title of the English language in these sentences, as well as her freedom to use it. She is flaved, yet this is what makes her human. Therefore, she shouldn't be reprimanded for her errors or shortcomings. Despite the reality that everyone in humanity is flaved, she queries why society overlooks the errors or even disaster of men and criticizes the errors of women. The words convey her happiness, sorrow, and hopes. For him, it is an essential component of her expression. Much of what carving What cawing means to crows and shouting is to lions. She continues by saying that what she says is human speech that brains can understand rather than unusual or sounds like the voices of dead people, trees in storms, monsoon clouds, or rain. She makes preparation for marriage. She was a child even if her body size increased and she approached puberty. Her soul was still immature. She pleaded for love when yet a child. But on the bed, her husband satisfied his lust. In this poem, the poet attempts to tell the narrative about every woman in her nation's history, in addition to describing her own married life. Her pains and grievances are shared by all the women in her nation. In her country, young women are compelled to wed elderly men against their will. They fail to acknowledge their adulthood because they were just teenagers. After getting married, the girl wants her spouse to be sympathetic and adore her. Instead, she is forced to undergo sex related sufferings that she isn't willing to experience after being pulled to bed. She claims that despite not having received physical abuse from him, her feminine body felt bruised and abused, and as a result, she grew weary of it. She perceived his genitalia as some weight that had weighed her down. She began to despise her female body since it had caused her so much suffering. She tried to dress like a man, to transform into a tomboy, to escape its weight, but her in laws were not in change. They began making fun of her. She was ordered to wear saris, act as a girl, a wife, an embroider, and a cook, and argue with servants, among other things. She was argued not to conceal who she was. Even her in laws gave her the order to be quiet and put up with her unfulfilled love. The lines reveal a woman's state while she is living with her in laws. She is compelled to adorn her candor and adopt the traits of a daughter in law. She feels compelled to comply with all her in laws ask of her. Even if she is unwilling to, she must complete all the tasks. Yet she continues to receive insults, reprimands, and taunts. If she is unhappy in her marriage, she is even argued not to display her sorrow. She encounters someone. She claims that the man represents every man who craves a woman as much as a woman craves a man's love. He responds with I when she asks who he is. He has a freedom to act however she pleases thanks to this I or male ego. He can laugh, drink, and fulfill his lust at midnight. However, he feels humiliated upon losing a woman as a result of his failings, and this ego or I likewise passes away with the person making his demise identical to that of the lady. She can therefore, like him, claim the pronoun I for herself. She experiences sin and virtue, love and betrayal, just like men do. Her pleasures and sufferings are the same as those of men. She therefore elevates herself to the status of I. The poem's main theme is quite obvious. The author explains how he thinks learners ought to engage with poetry before describing how they do it. His focus is on poems as an artwork of art rather than anything which has to be figured out or defined. In an introduction, Das develops deeply into the important issue of feminism, equal liberties, freedom, and marriage. If you like my explanation, please subscribe my channel. Thank you.